Welcome to episode 2 of Touhouvania. In the last part we went through the first 3 stages. Now we're going through, in this part we're going through the next 3. And this is also the point in the game where we're also introduced where the soul count that you can get from the monsters gets ridiculously high. I finished one of the stages in this with like 631. And we're also introduced to a new type of soul, which are just large souls. Not much of a difference really. And I will say this is also where the game becomes a lot more like a normal bullet hell, like normal Touhou series, because with the bosses especially, there will be things flying everywhere. Also, I had a bit of a trouble in between the last part of this, because the way I record it using Camtasia is I finish the part, then I just quit, then I make sure it's all recorded, then I quit the game. But what happened is, when I restarted the game to record this part, I accidentally pressed game start, which means I had to play the entire game up to this point, which is why the high score and my lives are a bit different. And by that, I mean the high score is actually a 0 this time. Actually, I wonder what the record score is for this game, because score is something very easy to get. I'm guessing to get the best score, you need to like kill every enemy, get every soul, and never use any of them, and not take any damage, because that seems like it'd be ridiculous to do. Now, I'm not sure, from what I can tell, a lot of the locations in the castle are based off real things from the Castlevania series. Like, this is based off the marble, whatever it is, from Symphony of the Night, and there's even a library level. The 2 levels from now I'll be in the library, which is obviously based off the library from Symphony of the Night. I think I got distracted right there, that's why I paused. But, yeah. Also, I gotta ask, I'm guessing a lot of these enemies are based off things from mythology, but what exactly are some of them? I don't know. I mean, that just... what is that giant head thing? I don't know. I mean, when my nephew saw me playing this the other day, he was really weirded out. And we're already at the end of the stage. Now, keep in mind that we're about 3 minutes in and we're at the boss of this stage. Apparently, these two are somehow related. I don't really read into this storyline because it's such a terrible storyline. You'll see why when we get to the final boss, that it is absolutely ridiculous. Alice here is probably the first real bullet hell of a boss, considering her dolls shoot bullets as well as she does. And if I had gotten hit by one of those dolls, I actually would have had to do the entire boss over again. Although I will say, Alice's boss theme is fantastic. It has a nice little dubstep feel to it. But then again, this entire game's soundtrack is absolutely fantastic. And now we're in the Colosseum level, which is based off the Colosseum from Symphony of the Night, I'm guessing. Now those things actually, the axes, whatever those are, do a lot of damage, so be careful in this area. But I will say, this stage's song is really weird. And by weird, I mean it's oddly rock and roll for a game that's supposed to be a tribute to the Castlevania series and the Touhou series at the same time. That might just be me being a bit bleh. Oh, and I'm probably going to mention this again next part, maybe I might just record that later tonight, but I'm not going to be doing the extra mode, which is pretty much the hard mode of this game, because I have not even beaten it yet. Mostly because well, I have attempted at least 4 times, I can barely get past the 4th stage. The amount of damage you take in that is just ridiculous, so. And I just realized my mouse is on the screen. God dang it, I need to make sure that's not on screen when I record this stuff. what I'm trying to do right now is I'm actually trying to see if I recognize any parts of this song, but none of them are coming to memory. Because I do know that at least that a couple of the songs in this one, I'm not sure about Touhouvania 2, I still haven't played it at this point, has some references in this song alone, like the first stage we'll be seeing next part, which I only know is going to be the first stage next part because I've played the game. And know what happens in it. But in the next part, the first stage, the song is a reference to Bloody Tears. I'm just gonna say that I'm gonna have to be silent at the beginning of the next video. I'm gonna say that again later on in this one because just in case I forget. Now, keep in mind that when we beat the boss in the last stage, we were 3 minutes in the video. This is where the stages in the game get a bit longer. By that I mean this and stage 7 are going to be about 5-6 minutes each. The Minotaurs actually, I can't believe I'm just mentioning this now, but in this stage we're also introduced to two very specific enemies, the Minotaurs and the Werewolves. They were actually individual bosses in Castlevania games, even though in Symphony of the Night you fought them as one boss. They are actually some of the best enemies in the game to give you souls, like they each give you at least 30, or 15, that's what the big souls, by the way, are 5 souls. I'm not sure if they're souls or whatever they are, but I'm just calling them souls, because I've played a bit of certain couple of games recently. Now, also, for the most part, in this game, I completely fell off that edge. I forgot that was a bottomless pit. You actually don't even really need to use the partners at all, but if you do, you're most likely going to be using Marissa, because hers, from what I've heard, is well, weaker than Cerno's individually. Does a lot more hits, which can add up to more damage from what I've heard. I've never really had time to test it out because I really just whip everything to death. I still find it very odd how, when you're flying, the individual souls count as bullets. That's kind of odd. But then again, I've seen weirder in games. Now, remember what I said earlier about souls being very easy to collect at this point? Look at the soul count right now. We have 526. I'd have to try really hard to get that in normal stages. And that's not even the highest I think it'll be in the next part, stage 7, or stage 6, but the first stage and next part, it might get a bit high too. Now, I recommend you get this turkey, I think that was there, and before heading into the next room, because the next room is actually the boss. Wow, my TV is loud. And this is Suika, I think that's how it's pronounced. She is a drunk, pretty much. I don't really know the backstory, but on the harder difficulties, especially on hard mode, and I haven't even gotten this far in extra mode, this is by far one of the hardest fights in the game. Because, as you can see, she has a lot of bullets. By the way, her sprite when it's blown up like that does not look good at all, because it's literally just her original sprite blown up to much bigger proportions. It would have looked better if they made a completely different sprite for that. And this is also a bit of a foreshadowing. She asks that after all this is done, they have a party. That will actually happen in the ending, if I remember correctly, at least. Yeah, so take a look at our score. A majority of our score was just 631,000 from the souls. I don't... Now, this is the library, which was based off the Long Library, I think it's called, from the Symphony of the Night. I'm not sure if this song is supposed to be a reference to the song in the Long Library, but all I know is that it's very soothing music. Actually, I actually recommend, if you guys ever have spare time, look up this game's soundtrack. It's fantastic. Almost as good as Symphony of the Night in terms of orchestration. And the blue skeletons, by the way, are pretty much the equivalent of the red skeletons, or blood skeletons as they're called in the Castlevania series. They can never fully die. They can only be knocked out, I guess you could say. And now we have these enemies right there, which I just killed, which is a direct reference to the Fleamen, or Hunchback enemies, as they, or, well, Hunchbacks as they're called in the original Castlevanias, but Fleamen is what they're known now, enemies from Castlevania. But luckily, if you remember from Castlevania 1 and 3, they're nowhere near as annoying. Because in this game you have fluid motion, which I rather like. And a lot of my pals were asking me why I actually like playing the old Castlevanias, just because they're horrible controls and they seems like it's infuriating. Well, it is infuriating. I like games that give me a challenge, and the controller gives me that challenge. I mean, if Castlevanias 1 and 2, maybe even 3, had this kind of control, they would probably be some very easy games, because that's what I like about the old school Castlevanias. And to compensate for that, the games that got better control like this and Super Castlevania 4 made it a bit more difficult in terms of stage design because of that. I like that little trade-off. Because game difficulty to me doesn't really matter as long as it's fun to play, though, so... And now, even books are attacking us. Jeez. Anyways, just show that little shelf to my right, I wasn't turning there because it doesn't give you a chance to turn in between attacks. I don't know why. You get that one up, so awesome. Also, one little effect I do like about this stage and the Coliseum in particular is that the farther in the stage you go, the darker it gets. Like, in the Coliseum, it's noticeable through the windows that the time is passing as you go through the rooms, technically speak. You know, it's really just a background effect. And in this, you're getting farther and farther in, so it gets darker. And we're at the boss with Patchouli? How do you pronounce that? She's the library master of the Scarlet Devil Castle and the Scarlet Devil Manor. She's also usually one of the last bosses from what I've seen, besides maybe Sakuya. And that was actually Cerno right there. As you can see, this is where if you're playing on easy mode at least, this is where the game becomes a true bullet hell in my opinion. Because with Suika from the last stage, well, there's a lot of stuff on screen. It's nowhere near as bad as this, because if you played Touhou, this is very reminiscent to one of the fights you can do in that. And that's the end of stage 6, I think. So anyway, if you like this video, rate, comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And I'll see you guys next time where we take on stage 7 and 8 and finish the game. See you then!